Cool. Okay. All right. Ready?
All right.
Okay. So why did you enroll in the war?
Well, Karl, everybody was in the war. Whether you were a doughboy or whether you were a groceryman or anything, everybody was in the war. It came on us so fast. When the Japs attacked us, we had no choice. We had no warning. We had no experience in what we were about to fall into. And we knew that we had been very, very against war all the while. We didn't want the war at all. We didn't want any kind of war. We just wanted to be Americans, and we wanted to be left alone. But they didn't want to do that. They attacked us without any warning, without any justification, without any purpose except they hated us and they wanted us out of the way. They wanted Asia to be theirs. And they were willing to sacrifice everything in their country. And we were absolutely unprepared for anything like this in the world. And that was the tough part. But I wanted to get in like everybody else did because I felt drawn to it. The young men were all going, Karl. The few military people we had were very inexperienced, and we were totally unprepared. We all had to learn. That's why I was so frightened. I knew nothing about war. None of us did. We had some maneuvers, and they were from Missouri, and they roamed on our farm 2 years before. And we treated them like Americans. And that's the first we saw of soldiers of any kind. And it hit us pretty hard. When they came to our farm, all they had was a few tents and some latrines where they went to the bathroom and so forth. And none of us had any good equipment. They did have a good rifle, the Garand rifle, and it was a fine rifle, but we had hardly anything else. The tanks that they came to our farm with were so broken down that some of the tracks ran off when they unloaded them off the train.
Wow.
And they had to drag them out of the way. They wouldn't even run. That's how unprepared we were. We didn't hate anybody. We loved everybody. We'd just been through a real depression in which everyone was so blasted poor that we didn't ever want to be that poor again. But that's the way it was. We didn't have any animosity toward anyone. That's why I went to, because I was drawn just like everyone else.
So when you when you go to the war, did you ever boot camp?
Very, very much so. I was a strong young kid, and I learned plenty, and I learned fast. When we first went, the whole process of getting to be a soldier takes a lot of time. And we were always so unprepared because we had never experienced anything. I'd never seen a black man until that time when I went to the Southland, which was in Arkansas. I saw the first Army camp for infantry, IRTC, Infantry Replacement Training Camp. And we simply came off the train. It was hot. We were all a little frightened. We were all very green, and this was war. But it was so strange that we could hardly accept it. We had nothing to accept it by. It was a strange and a tough life. Do you want to hear about anything of the camps, or are you interested in that?
Oh yes, yeah. Because like, any boot camp stories?
Well, they were very well prepared for us. They had run many different people through before I came on the scene, and from the very start, we learned that when officers said something to you, you'd better pay attention, because it was important, and you'd better know it now. That they were the lawnmower and you were the grass. Believe me, it was tough. We first day we fell out about 6 o'clock in the morning, got something to eat, and then we would go to different parts of the training fields. And first of all, you learn to walk. You walked and walked and walked. You couldn't really accept it at first because you'd never been prepared for something like that. It was just too tough. It was too hot, and we just weren't tough enough. So a lot of times the training staff would say, okay, we'll have a two hour orientation class, and then we'll go see a movie about the war, and then we'll do something else. But they usually give you some sort of an here's the worst. And it was usually pretty bad. We wound up going on 35-mile hikes, fast pace. To walk fast for 35 miles, we had to be plenty toughened, and it took time. But that was just the one thing. We were infantry. We had a rifle to carry. We had a machine gun somewhere in the company. We had a Browning automatic rifle somewhere in the company. We had a few mortars, all these things like bazookas, and we didn't know if they would work or if they wouldn't work, because they usually didn't work, because you can't kill a tank with a little pea shooter. They demand the best. Go ahead, Karl, and interrupt me. Do whatever you want. Just tell me, ask me anything. I'll be glad to.
Okay. So what places did you go throughout your war?
Throughout the war? Well, let me give you just a little, maybe a brief excerpt. 3-hour ride, train ride, 3-day train ride from where I came from, central Minnesota, brought me down to the training grounds in Arkansas. It was a very hot country. It was very dry. You were never allowed any more than just one canteen of water. They said, you make that last for the day. And we made it last. We were 17 weeks in training at that camp. And it was pretty nearly all quite new and startling. Throughout the day, we would have a kind of a microscopic view of what we would have to cover during those 17 weeks. They were very much foreshortened because they needed, at that time, they needed infantry very badly. In the Vosges Mountains of France, where the Nazis had thrown their best and their last massive onslaughts against the Americans. When I was finished with my basic training, as they call, I stepped into my first airplane, and they were very interested in getting us to Europe. The Germans had pinned us down, and they didn't like it. It was in the mountains of eastern France. I think that the most impressive thing right off was how fast they moved us. We one day were told to be ready at 7 o'clock. We were going to go on board a ship. It was the Queen Mary from England. It held 20,000 men.
Wow.
And it took almost 2 full days to load, with men literally running to the ships and being directed down in places for them. They had a sack that they would be assigned, and it took about 3 hours to feed them, so they fed all day long. You would simply walk downstairs and just sit there for a while, and then walk down more stairs till you went down to, say, the 7th deck below. And then you would be fed food that you never had before. It was mostly mutton. Mutton is not lamb. Mutton is mutton, and doesn't smell very good. And we had some bread to go with that, lots of water to drink. England was into the war up to their lower lip, and they were, for a long time, losing it. So you can see that it wasn't a grand cruise. That Queen Mary went about 37 miles an hour in the ocean. And after 4 days of being blacked out of sight of land and a whole new way of living, we had to stand duty at guns on the decks. They said that it's a possibility that submarines would surface and start shelling us. So we were there. We knew nothing about how, but there was always some Englishmen who knew how to handle a cannon, and we'd let that. We never did see a submarine. The submarines were beat by 1944, and so that was our deliverance. We then, after we got to Scotland, early one morning we had a flight of fighter planes. The Spitfires of England flew over us and gave us a real thrill. And then we hit Glasgow, Scotland. We came off the ship, and we were put into what they call 40 and 8s. 40 and 8s were held 8 horses and 40 men. That's the way it was. They were pretty small, but that's what they called them, even from World War I. 40 and 8s. 8 horses, 40 men. Take your pick. And the plane, the train never stopped for anything except what it actually had to stop for. if you had to go to the bathroom, your men would have to help hold you so that you could do that, because nobody was going to stop that train. So we went across England and we got to Southampton. That's a port on the east coast of Britain. It was there that we transferred into different craft of one kind or the other. Some of them not really very fancy. They were pretty rough. We got to the coast of France sometime after they had taken the coast of France. You know, you all read about the marvelous landing that Eisenhower and the Americans made, and that it took, I believe, in advance of 10 or 15,000 men to establish the beachheads, and whoever got killed, got killed. The rest survived and pushed inland. That was not my time. I was after that time, so I don't want to give the idea that I was there at the Normandy landings. I was not. It was after that. But nonetheless, it was just as forbidding and was still war all around us. So we again transferred back in these old ships of the old cargo railroad cars of France. France was badly beaten. The people were friendly. They were friendly in Scotland also, but the time was of the essence. So we just traveled through the countryside as fast as we could toward the front. That would be now in the Vosges Mountains of eastern France, where the Germans had us pinned down around Christmas time of 1944. It was winter. Everybody had white clothing on so that they would match into the white of the snow. There was snow on the ground, and they didn't want good targets. They wanted poor targets. They wanted the Germans not to be able to pick us out from the snow. So that was my first impression of the actual war that was taking place. It was cold. We were frozen to death.
It's about
Go ahead.
a minute, 30 seconds.
We probably should take a break now.
Yes,
That's a good place to, because your camera's going to follow me.
Well, does this help you?
Oh yeah,